My name is Anton. I have been in America for about 4 years. I started studying QA approximately about a year ago, in November. Before that, he spent time in various professions, worked and lived in New York, primarily worked in restaurants, worked in construction, worked as a taxi driver. In general, he worked in different jobs. I came to QA through my close friend, who introduced me to the school for QA, and mentor. I found it interesting because it was related to programming. Before this, I knew what QA was. I mainly knew about manual QA. I had friends who were involved in it, but I always thought it was uninteresting because, well, what could be interesting? Sitting and clicking different buttons on a computer with a mouse. And suddenly, QA automation opened up for me, revealing that it is more interesting, more in-depth, and involves programming skills. And since I believe that programming is the future, and also it is an opportunity to earn good money. Thinking about earning well and having a good start to enter the IT industry, I decided to master this field. My first job was in construction in Brooklyn. I worked there for 2 weeks, then I pulled my back and was unable to work. But I was lucky. I found a job in 3 days. Well, at that time they really needed money. There was no money. You had just arrived. I found a job in a Russian restaurant as a busboy assistant. And after 3 days, I ended up with a strained back. In general, I worked a 12-hour shift there, but they took me in well for that job. I worked there for about 4 months. It was probably the hardest job ever because you are a waiter, and in a Russian restaurant, there are no boundaries. You can be insulted a lot, and they can even send you away. In general, a Russian restaurant is a place where you don't really have to work at all, but you have to. Then I moved on to work in an American bar when I received my documents. It was really a cool place, capturing the spirit of an American bar, where there were Americans, and the whole culture was New Yorkers American. It was really interesting to work with them and also to understand American culture, improving my English. After that, he worked in several more restaurants. He worked in a pizzeria and in a restaurant in Harlem. It was a black restaurant. Most of the visitors were black. It was also a rather interesting experience. After that, it turned out that my friend, a good friend, came from Moscow, planned to come from Moscow to Los Angeles, and he invited me to Los Angeles on the West Coast. Well, to live here for a while and see. At that time, I was still interested in filming, and in fact, Los Angeles, being a mega film production hub, was interesting to me. So I decided to stay there for a little while and moved here to Los Angeles a year ago. And you could say it was also difficult at that time because there were no friends here and there wasn't really a profession either. As experience has shown, for example, finding a job here in a restaurant where I had experience turned out to be much more difficult than in New York. Apparently, because there are many actors here, many newcomers, and against their background, and not competitive. Therefore, at first to earn money, I had to somehow manage, well, not spend money and work in moving. In general, it is also one of the toughest professions. Oh, at the construction site at that time, they were paying, if I'm not mistaken, $12 an hour. In the restaurant, it was about $20 an hour. While moving jobs currently pay around $15, $16 an hour. It could be 17 if you know English. You are like a foreman. After that, I took a car and started working part-time with Uber driving and doing deliveries. This is already a more or less normal job, where it was possible to somehow combine it with studying and move forward. Because everything, for example, moving or construction, is impossible to combine. You just come home tired from work, and all you want to do is collapse on the couch. And it was then, specifically at the movie, by the way, that I met. Very well, yes, I met. And it was with Alexei and his close friend that he introduced me to the school, to PSV. This is where I looked. I read the reviews, and I liked the course program. So I decided that I needed to try this direction. And since I had already started working as the busiest, There was an opportunity to combine things. I started attending all the preparatory classes whenever possible, even before the official course began, before the official date. Then I began to attend all the lectures that I could. At first, there were actually no difficulties, but I understood that the more I learn, the more information there will be. That is, I had a certain experience in understanding how you actually study a new profession. When I was studying videos, and I realized, for example, what volume of information we would have to learn. And from the numerous questions of the people who asked them during the lecture, I saw that if right now, well, it was easy for me. At first, because I am young, I have a higher education, I am constantly learning, I have taken many courses, and I know how to study and what it is like, and it was enough for me. Well, it was easy at first, but I saw from other students that some find it difficult, especially those who are older. And I understand that it will be difficult later, actually. I think it will be hard for everyone. According to the recommendations given by the curators and teachers, that the best thing is, of course, to dedicate all your free time to studying. Based on this, I understood that there would be a lot of information and it would be difficult later. In 3-4 months, when there will be work on the project, it will be necessary to dedicate much more time. At first, I dedicated 4 to 5 hours a day. In the beginning, it was easy because everything was straightforward, everything was simple. All the information was right there, just take it and solve it. That is, the stage of entry is very smooth, it is very gentle. It's great that it exists. JavaScript syntax courses, JavaScript practice. This is a lot of structured information. I don't need to go somewhere to look for it. Basically, all the information is right here and now. And it's very convenient. It saves a lot of time. Actually, that's why I decided to study, because I understood that it would save me a lot of time compared to searching for things on the internet myself. Then I studied for 2 months, November and December, very well. In January, everyone had a break. And then I was offered a job related to real estate, dealing with renting apartments. And it turned out that there was an interesting experience. There were well, the salary was quite good. And unfortunately, I couldn't manage to combine them anymore. But since everything was recorded, I understood that, well, I could basically catch up later if needed. So that's it. Well, the immediate and urgent needs and pressing needs prevailed at that moment. And in fact, it's very bad. It's very bad. I regret that. I didn't continue back then. But at that moment, it was such a decision. Yes, I paused, and then the quarantine happened. There was less work, I had more free time, and I learned that a new cohort was starting, so I signed up for the new cohort. I was accepted, I was incredibly happy, and I already started going through the same course with everyone again. At first, it was, of course, even easier for me, even simpler, because I knew some basics and helped other guys in some places. Then we started our practical classes and we began writing test cases. In other words, the practice had begun. And as I can say, there was much more practice in this course, and that is very good. Because in practice, I understood much more than I might have known in theory. I am most likely planning to join a working group to a new project to test there, because as I understand, they need people there. It's just huge. The volume of work, so I am no longer interested in going over something that I already know and understand. Instead, I want to delve deeper and apply it in practice. From the second year, I believe it was a great advantage that Julia was there, because it was Julia who taught the theory this time, and she mainly focused on practice, as she is purely a practitioner. She works, she has excellent experience, and as far as I know, she is also a team lead at her job, and she has given a lot of useful advice. How work processes are structured in the company, like the daily ones. What questions might be asked in an interview, because she has gone through this herself. This is very important because, as I I notice that many people ask, yes, tell us, how does your workday go? And a person who hasn't worked, of course, finds it difficult. My friends who are learning QA online are really just struggling with these questions and finding it quite challenging. They ask me directly, tell us, do you do Scrum? What do you do? What time do you start? How does your workday go? Do you have any problems at work? Well, these are like, the daily tasks, and she provides certain insights into this process based on her own experience. Of course, we build our entire process in the course based on what I like, as we are a united team since there is a project, and we have work according to the Scrum methodology. Everything is clear, everything is structured. We work from small to large. We write tests, then we automate them. Basically, it's all like it happens in real work. What she tells us, how it is for her, is the same experience that applies to us. It's wonderful, of course, that there is Larissa. She is a very good help with JavaScript. All the lectures she has are a wonderful treasure trove of knowledge to review, rework, and see how to solve one problem in a different way. Of course, there is also Victor, who is the one providing us with all the new tools. The most interesting thing is that in the course, we are trying out new tools. For example, as far as I know, in the last course, they introduced a new database, Mongo database, which wasn't there before. And as I know, some were surprised that we are introducing new tools right now, which for some reason haven't been tested yet. The reasonable response was that this is how it happens in real life. People switch to new software and things get updated. No one is going to come to you and say, here, let me give you a big, detailed manual on how to do this. No, you learn it yourself along with everyone else. And this is basically a normal working process. Another good point, yes, is when students participate. There were many students in this course who were perhaps a head above. Than most, they indeed had a great experience and no programming language. I do have a question about how they ended up in this course, what they were doing here, but it's actually a great advantage because you can write to them, you can ask them. We can hear from them, gain their experience, plus some of them took the initiative themselves, wrote, and held workshops. It was outside the course framework. It was at that moment when, I don't know, we were walking together and Googling, finding answers. And this also helps to develop oneself. Because like in any profession, especially here, it is constant development, development, development. It won't be like this. We stop and learn the language and that's it. We can relax, we can just work. No. Something is constantly being updated. And it's interesting. You always need to stay on your toes, I believe. I tried to structure my, you could say, study day. It was in the morning as I lark. In general, I love to do some tasks in the morning, solve problems, take tests, go through them. JavaScript, syntax. Here, you can take a look at some lectures that I missed. Then during the day I had work, and in the evenings, I mostly spent my free time on lectures. Well, because the lectures were mostly in the evening, and, well, they were a bit easier for me to absorb, because when you are solving problems, when you are looking for some information, it still requires mental activity, which works at full capacity, because you need to go through the solution of some problem that you can't find, and by the evening I still have less energy. Plus, in the evening, everyone, all the lectures were in the evening. And also, an important point that I noted for myself is that it is preferable to attend the lectures online, in real time, rather than watching them later, because it's a different atmosphere. You understand everything in a different way. At first, I was watching them in recordings for the first 2 months because it was all new to me, but I was just watching them at an accelerated speed, well, because I basically already knew it. Then I realized that the lectures had become new, with new information, and I started attending them online, and I felt the difference. I just know that many people who work do not have the opportunity to attend online, but if there is a chance, it should be taken. It's definitely a big plus. In my opinion, The main qualities for any student to be successful in studying this course, and in any other courses as well, are, of course, the ability to learn. This is an open mind, meaning to be open to new information, somewhat to criticism, and not afraid to ask questions. If there are questions, any necessary ones, they should definitely be asked, maybe even if I'm not stupid. And of course, persistence is needed. I know from the experience of a couple of my friends who asked me, they also wanted to go, and I told them that I say, here are some preliminary tasks, preliminary lectures, check them out if you like them or not. But I know that it won't suit you because it requires perseverance. You really need to sit down and code. That means you need to sit for 4 or 5 hours, so it's not for everyone, this profession is not for everyone. We set monotones before this. You can seem boring. You can seem annoying when you can't solve a certain task. Either you have a project, for example, you missed a couple of weeks, and the guys have already moved a certain distance, and you see that a new project, new methods, are being used. You have to sit down and just read every line of code. Open the file and understand where this comes from, why this goes here, and why that goes there. And yes, perseverance is one of the important skills that one should have. And of course, time. If there is no time, then a person simply won't keep up with the rhythm. Because really, 6 months is not as much as it seems. It seems like a lot, but in reality, it is little. This is little. It can be stretched out, made less intense, and in general, something else can be added to it, because there is indeed a lot of information. Throughout the course, we receive some additional sources of information that are recommended for us to read, and I realized that I simply don't have the time. I would like to read this article as well, but I just don't have the time. Guys who share information in Slack, I only have enough time to copy it and save it somewhere to review later, for example. To know that someone shared a link to the main interview questions, then I will get back to them. Indeed, yes, the course is very intensive, but the challenge is such that in 6 months you can master a new profession so that you can then go for interviews. You can confidently go through interviews. Just recently, probably a few weeks ago, a student from our group found a job at Amazon. She lives in Seattle, and she found a job at Amazon. This is manual QA, but he essentially told us at one of the meetings what this job is about. They are testing, as I understood, Amazon applications on devices. That is, she comes to the office and they have, roughly speaking, 30 completely different devices. And their task is to test everything, the work of everything, all software and applications on each of these devices. She told us at one meeting what she found and how she found it. And she started attending our group meetings less frequently because she needed to work. She also shared her interesting experience because, well, I believe that working at Amazon is really cool. It doesn't really matter what position you hold. I believe that if you have Amazon, Google, Facebook, or Apple on your resume, it's just a checkbox for everyone that you work there. It's like a must-have. That's cool. What you do there doesn't matter. But it's really great if you've worked at each of them. And, well, as for my understanding, it might be a silly understanding, but it seems to me that ideally, if you live in America, it's like, well, Silicon Valley, which is also like the mecca of all programmers today. And it seems to me that if you have worked, for example, at Amazon, at Google, well, I have this kind of silly dream, and you have worked at Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Apple, and then, for instance, you decide to work not in America, but to go live in Europe or Asia, then that would be such a background where you wouldn't need to look for a job, I believe. That's it. Right now, she just asks everything about where you worked. I mean, it's like you worked on Wall Street, for example. Either you worked, filmed movies in Hollywood, well, wherever you go, what is written there will immediately take you in, because this is the standard, I believe, for now. This is the standard. I don't know how accurate it is, but in some countries it seems that async is highly regarded, especially in European countries. Now, if we consider our development not only in America, but in the whole world, and for the new course, for the guys who are planning to go, have already gone, or are unsure whether to go or not, I would definitely recommend going. I would recommend trying out the introductory lectures, watching them, and solving some problems, because let's be honest, it is one of the high-paying jobs. And to get into IT like this, after 6 months, or fine, let's say after a year, you can still spend another 6 months looking for a job, a year and a half, 2 years, it doesn't matter. It's much shorter than going to college, spending a huge amount of money there, and then also looking for a job. It's like a life hack, they say. And indeed, it works to really achieve that, maybe not just a level up, but a level up. It's about starting with a simple job, like being a taxi driver, just arriving, and immediately moving up to a certain level of income, and working normally. In other words, working like a white person. Here. And I recommend everyone to definitely try it, because I regret that I didn't go earlier, because I didn't know, I had different ideas, because in my environment there were those who... One friend of mine was doing manual testing, and I just found it uninteresting. I didn't know that automation actually existed. If I had known, I would have gone there earlier, of course. Of course, try your hand at it. It is preferable that your work schedule allows you to combine both. I certainly understand that we live in America, and spending 6 months just not working is quite an expensive luxury. I'll even say more. Actually, at work I encountered a guy from New York. He came here for a vacation, and he is a junior programmer, the very lowest level of junior. We were talking and he said, "I'm a junior, the lowest level there in New York in JavaScript." I replied, "Oh, interesting. I'm studying QA automation and other things. I just started. It was in November." I said, "Tell me how you got there. What did you study?" He said, I took a boot camp. I studied for about 4 or 5 months every day, 6 days a week for 10 hours. I really sat down for 10 hours. I worked in finance before. I had money. I could afford not to work. I left finance because I don't like the banking sector. It is stagnant and conservative. And I wanted more freedom, more movement, more creativity. I went into programming and decided to give it a try. And I studied for 10 hours a day for 4 or 5 months, almost every day. That is a huge amount of work. And the person has reached the level of junior JavaScript because the amount of information is really huge. It is substantial. But there is a life hack, yes, on how to enter programming specifically through QA. I consider this to be a natural, one might say gentle way, and a quick and gentle way to enter this field and start earning decent, respectable money. Because even in a simple job, well, where can you earn $30 an hour? Well, you can go work as a cable installer there, I know. Well, you can drive a truck, yes. Well, there are no prospects here. In 10 years, there won't be any trucks. There will be robots driving. Tesla is already making its tracks that will be used. Therefore, we need to look at the prospects and programming. What will happen will really happen. It will take a very, very long time, I believe. I know, yes, many people from my circle, my friends, the guys, many of them want to say, yes, indeed, programmers are the future. It will always be promising. But some of them, I say, well, this is not for you, my friend. I mean, you don't have the patience. You won't really sit down, dig in there, fuss around, study. Look at why your program isn't working here. What's wrong here? Somewhere it's complaining about the syntax, or you need to open the project. As I remembered, I went to New York for a few days. Then I was busy with work, so I fell a bit behind on the project. I opened the project, and there's a lot of new stuff, meaning I wrote my tests, and then started looking at how the other guys write tests. And it was, of course, you just sit there all day and simply read all of this to just understand. You really, truly need to absolutely sit down comfortably and take your time to study. That's why I believe everyone should give it a try, because you never know what you might like. Plus, being a programmer would be cool. It's awesome, because everyone you tell, a programmer is something like a wizard. It's something that seems like magic to people that he does something like that. It's so unclear. He walks around with a gloomy face. They walk around with gloomy faces like that, and that's it. That's great. Many people want to, yes, many of my friends say, man, I would also like to become a programmer. But now, probably, I can't, for example. I no longer have those learning skills to start over somehow. By the way, many of my guys were particularly inspired after Dudia's video about silicon removal. So we looked at them and they were all like, wow, damn. If I were right now in San Francisco, well, even the people who are in New York, it's San Francisco, right? I would probably also go to some boot camp for sure and hang out there. Yeah. Well, of course, it's all just words to a large extent. This is how it is. Studying is, of course, less romantic. Learning is less romantic than it seems, but it is something that needs to be done. Hard in training, easy in battle. This is the step that needs to be taken. Yes, I sometimes force myself, really. I set a plan for myself that I have to spend an hour solving tasks. I need to work on the project for 2 hours, read the project and review it. I also think it's a huge plus that we work as a team here in the course. The fact that there is a common project, or that we have one GitHub, one repository. We wanted to divide into groups, but it's good that we all stayed together, and there is a wonderful opportunity for me to go in there. I can see how others wrote that very test, how they write their code, and very often I discover very interesting finds for myself. Some methods, some ways to optimize things. I look and think, wow, that's great. I check who did it and I see, wow, the Iranians are impressive. It looks like a genius to take all the tests, combine them into a cycle, and set up automatic numbering for these tests, linking them. I think, damn, really? And you look at JavaScript, which we learned through tasks, quite isolated ones, of course. You observe how they behave in their natural environment, how to utilize them specifically in the work process. And the most important thing is, this is where a loop can be. This is where you can use methods for an array. This is where you can use methods for a string. And gradually, like a puzzle, understanding comes together piece by piece. What, why, where, not right away, of course, not right away. Some topics are still unclear to me. I watched the promised lecture and I still don't understand them. I need to review it again. We need to look at the code and ask someone. It's good that we have it. Group meetings, it's definitely easy there. There are guys who know this. I can open up, ask the guys, for example, explain to me this code, let's say, with promise, why we did it this way, for what purpose we are using it here. And they explain it to me. If they don't understand, I will ask the question again. And this is a big advantage, actually. Very wonderful. This, roughly speaking, means you are learning together with a mentor. When you have the opportunity to ask a question, get an answer right now. Because even in Google, when I searched for WebDriver.io, which we use, and some of its methods, there isn't always information available. On GitHub, for example, I found there was little information on how to resolve a conflict or something else. And still, you watch all the videos on YouTube. They are isolated because you don't have the source code and you don't fully understand this particular project. But why is it done this way? And when you are in your project, when you know your project, know its structure, and these questions arise based on your project, and you ask them, you get answers, you have a much better understanding of how to resolve these same conflicts. What methods are used for WebDriver here? Why use this method here instead of that one? Or why is my code not working? Why is my test failing? If you have the opportunity, if you want to try, definitely give it a go. Make sure to sign up for the course, try it out, see how it goes, whether it suits you or not, and then you can decide, because you can only understand this through practice, only when you encounter it. Sitting and thinking is the wrong approach. You need to try. So try, be bold. If you have the desire, you will succeed. Not on the first try, not on the second, but on the third. We have people in the course who will be going through it for the third time. But in the end, they will all get there. Everyone has their own path. Some are fast, some are slow, and we are all different. We are all individuals. Therefore, the main thing is to keep going.